This is The Road Show, and I'm your host, David Warren. Well, it's that time of year again. Time to put on a sweater and time to talk about the oldest continuously published periodical in North America, the Old Farmer's Almanac. Joining us again this year is Carol Conair, the 14th editor of the Almanac since it began back in 1792. The new 2026 edition of the OFA is now available, and as expected, we'll give you a full roadshow review. Let's get started by welcoming back our friend, Carol Conair.
Hello, great to be on.
Well, it's great to have you back. This is actually your third visit. You have completed 2 full years plus at the Old Farmer's Almanac, being at the helm as editor. So are you fully settled in at this point, Carol?
I do feel settled in, and we know that that's true usually in doing our work when you don't know what year it is, because we do calendars as well, and we're working on 2028 right now. So, and we're always thinking ahead. So I think I've definitely settled in because I believe it's 2025, but I feel like it's 2026.
Quirky question. When you write out a check to pay for something, do you sometimes get confused on what year to put?
Absolutely, especially when we've just changed one. In January, I'll be a mess.
Well, how would you describe this last year at the helm?
Oh, I think it's been really productive and fun. Our longtime creative director is retiring, which we're really happy for her, but we're bringing on an exciting new person to the team. So that's kind of insider baseball, you know, things going on in the back. But I think also this issue, the 2026, was really a good one to work on, thinking about our country turning 250 next year. So, you know, that's one blessing of being able to work ahead is we're thinking ahead and kind of living ahead, but that made it exciting.
What does a creative director do? How will that person help you?
Oh, well, when you look at the pages and you see the photographs and the way things are laid out, they're really doing the graphic design of each publication, which, of course, we have the annual Almanac, but we have many others as well. And so really thinking about the Almanac brand, you know, what do we want to look like to the public across that family of products on almanac.com. And so Colleen Quinnell, who's been with us for, I think she's in her 13th year, has really been doing that, and it's including a refresh of the Almanac cover in 2017 for our anniversary. And so, yeah, I think it's really taking care of the look and feel. You know, we feel like the Almanac readers are part of our family, and so we want to feel like that whenever they're looking at the Almanac and our other products.
I would imagine a goal of yours as the editor and all the team there at the Old Farmer's Almanac is that somebody can walk in a bookstore or see a newsstand and recognize the Almanac from across the room. Do I have that correctly?
Absolutely. In fact, this time of year, since we're really everywhere, we ask our friends and family across the country to send us photographs of the book in the wild, you know, at bookstores or in grocery stores or garden stores. And so we get a lot of snapshots. We like to see what we look like out there because we can't be in the thousands of stores we're in. But it's important for people to walk up and say, oh, there's the Almanac and there's the calendars, and know that it's our brand, because they trust us.
This is the 234th edition since 1792. So you got to keep things somewhat the same, but you got to inject the new into the Old Farmer's Almanac. So what's something new in this 2026 edition that maybe we would have never seen before?
Oh, I think one really fun story, and it's beautifully illustrated, is the journey to the junkosphere, which is all about the satellites and really debris circling our planet. It's fascinating. You know, it's new information. It's certainly a new dilemma. For certainly 234 years ago, that wasn't a problem. but you know, it's kind of this amazing story, scientific, but also just really a think piece. So I think that's an exciting new type of thing. But I also think we do old things in new ways. Like we have a story, we know our readers are, you know, lovers of home remedies, as are we. So we're talking about honey, but many of its healing properties are being discovered anew, and its health properties. So again, it's kind of an old-timey thing, honey for health, but thinking about how that is absolutely truer than ever.
Well, I feel like you have become a friend to this program and our listeners, as your predecessors have joined us for like 3 decades now, 3+ decades with Judd Hale, Janice Stillman, and now you, Carol Conair, the 14th editor and the second female editor since 1792. And one of the things that I flip to first every almanac is the letter to the patrons, which you are in charge of. By the way, you're a beautiful writer.
Thank you.
So you wrote this year's letter, and you called it Weathering. And I love what that was about, but why don't you tell our listeners what the premise of what you wanted to get across is?
Sure, thank you. It's a privilege to talk about that. I think that we all have been thinking about the weather. We talk to people in the growing country, in the growing parts of the country, I should say, and weather it's something that affects us all. Foul weather certainly, but just weather patterns. It's for 234 years something that the Almanac's been talking about. And so my letter looks at the idea of weathering, and actually the word itself, weather. It's from the Old English and Dutch weder, or wedder, W-E-D-E-R, and it means storm and tempest. But also, I found when we looked at the Greek word kairos, the words for weather and time have similar origins in several languages, and I think that really is true. It's kind of like sometimes when we feel like we're weathering something, the weather is going to change. Mm-hmm. And so if we wait long enough, the weather will change. But also there's this sense of weathering, like I can stick it out. And so I think it's all of those things all wrapped up in one. And so that's what I was getting at with my letter.
Weather and time are both cyclical, so they go hand in hand.
Yes.
They work together. Well, it's been about a year since we talked about the Old Farmer's Almanac, so, we don't remember everything over 12 months. So let's review some of the pertinent information for our listeners today. Tell us why this periodical was created some 234 years ago.
Well, we weren't the first almanac. We are the longest, as you said, and most widely distributed. And so our founder, Robert B. Thomas, looked at other almanacs out there, which tended to be regional. Ours started out for just New England. And it's really an almanac is a calendar. It's something for every day of the year. And so in our calendar pages, you'll see that we literally do have something for every day of the year, whether it's, a tide or a fun fact, a little snippet of poetry, maybe a feast day indicating a holiday of some sort. And so the idea was that in those days, in 1792, you might have the Bible, you might have a broadside, but you didn't have a lot of reading material typically in households. And every other person was also probably a farmer of some sort, growing for themselves or their families or their neighbors. And so this idea of a book that has something useful and entertaining for every day of the year focused on the grower, that's really what we were born out of.
Well, the mandate of the Old Farmer's Almanac and your mandate as editor is to be useful with this periodical and have a pleasant degree of humor. Now, one of the things that you all have done in the past, and I'm sure you're still doing it, you have a special package that would be great for teachers, especially in like elementary school, junior high, high school, maybe even college. But you sell, along with, in this case, the 2026 Almanac, you have the 1926 and the 1826 Almanac so that we can look back at life 100 and 200 years ago. Are you still doing that?
Yes, we do. And so we publish those replicas every year at the 100 and 200 year anniversary because, of course, we can. And they're fascinating. Just like you said, a snapshot in time. Even the advertisements are interesting and telling to look at and what was on folks' mind at the time, certainly what prices were. But this idea of really self-sufficiency, self-reliance in those days to be, a settler in America.
Well, I mentioned that there is a pleasant degree of humor in each almanac for each year, and I'm just curious, when you look back at the 1926 and even the 1826 almanacs, does that humor translate to today?
Oh, not always. In fact, infrequently it does. I would say, there's things that we might even find offensive today in sort of the language or the reference to certain groups of people. And so those things don't really translate at all. But I think when we think about amusement or entertainment, or a degree of humor, the things that really do stand up over time are snippets of poetry, little anecdotes, puzzlers, done in good cheer. And so those things do hold up over time. But of course, we're always looking for fresh things as well. Yeah, I'd say once in a while we come across the thing that, we definitely would never run again.
Well, before we take our first break, Carol, what would you say an element that Carol Conair brings to the Old Farmer's Almanac? What is something uniquely Carol there?
Ooh, well, I guess I would say there's a few things. I think my sense of humor, I hope, because, we are always trying to do that, as you said. And so pretty much that's a unique one. And so how does that play out? I'm a little bit of a nerd. But I think, yes, this idea of also wanting to make it I think for me, what I'm trying to bring is a sense of a new generation coming to the Almanac. And, things like folklore are really popular with the younger generation now, and we've had that forever. Again, kind of one of those amusements that we've had for a long time. So I think what I'm bringing to it is this idea that all the things that we are doing are relevant to a younger audience, but we're trying to reach them. So I've been doing things like appearing on a lot of podcasts, and we're reaching out to influencers with our book because they really love our content once they find it. So I think just an attitude or a point of view is something I've been bringing along those lines.
And are you encouraged that the younger people are excited about farming and gardening and all the other things in the Almanac?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the stories I'm working on now for 2027 is called Many Happy Returns, about U.S. farmers returning to their family farm. So, going off and saying, I'm going to go to college or, school for this or that, and then deciding, I really want to go back to the family farm. But they're doing it in new ways, this new generation of farmers. They're bringing technical skills. They may have totally changed the focus of their family farm. And so that's an exciting story for us because we do see this generation going back to the land, but really bringing a robust set of skills.
I love that. Well, coming up here in just a few moments, we'll talk about farms in 2026. But as we go to break, I want to say that the new edition is the 2026 Old Farmer's Almanac, available wherever books are sold. That would be bookstores, newsstands, on the website almanac.com, and even an old-fashioned phone can reach them at 1-800-ALMANAC. So as we go to break, I would like for you to mention the different editions that are available. I am currently holding in my hand what's called the Classic Edition. It has a hole in the top left corner. Again, it has that same familiar cover. It's yellow with Benjamin Franklin on the left and Robert B. Thomas on the right. Now, tell people why there's a hole in the Classic Edition.
Sure. Well, it dates back to our usefulness, which we always set out to be, and this idea that you can hang it in a nail in your barn. Certainly in the outhouse, we've had people tell us that's where we are. But, I think it makes it handy, and that's always what the Almanac wanted to be, is right at hand. In fact, we're talking about a younger audience. We're not much bigger than a phone, but we have a lot of information that maybe it would be hard to find on your phone unless you go to almanac.com. But the idea is that we hear a lot of younger people say, it smells good. It smells like a book. I open it up and the pages, they have this aroma. And I think that's kind of interesting. People need to maybe get off of their screens a little more.
I totally agree with you on that. So we have the Classic Edition, the paperback with the hole, top left corner. Then there's the Collector's Edition. What's special about that?
The collector's edition is actually our hardcover edition, and it's really beautiful. It's got a beautiful blue binding with gold lettering, and the pages are a little bit brighter, and so that's a well-printed copy on heavier paper stock. And so, and it's full color, all the pages that are color.
All right.
And that's lovely. We have almost 100,000 subscribers to that edition every year.
Wow.
And then we have, as you said, the classic, but we also have a bookstore edition as well, and that edition is a little bit bigger. It has the brighter paper, and so but it doesn't have the hole, and it's got a little sturdier cover. And then we also have a large print edition, which is tabloid size, and it's not full color; it's black and white. And those are available. We just started those last year, and it's been a really big hit with people. We sold, I don't even know, like maybe 40,000 copies of that last year.
Well, these last two formats you just mentioned are available on Amazon, both the trade edition and the oversized edition. So if people are Prime members, they can look for it on their Prime account and order it there. Well, I'm David Warren talking with the editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac, and we're getting ready for our annual Almanac flip through. When we come back, we will give you predicted trends for 2026. Back after this. I'm David Warren here with some exciting news for Oasis listeners. We have a new mobile device app. It's free, easy to download, and lets you enjoy our refreshing music and talk everywhere you go. If you have an Android cell phone, go to the Google Play Store. And if you have an iPhone or iPad, visit the Apple Store and search for Oasis Radio Network. Be an Oasis ambassador and share this news with family and friends around the world.
Oasis Roadshow.
On the Roadshow, back with us for our annual chat is Carol Conair, the editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac. She's the 14th editor since 1792 and the second female editor. I am David Warren, your host for the hour. And Carol, you are in the great state of New Hampshire, so tell us what the surroundings are there where you are.
Well, we just went through our peak foliage, so the leaves are starting to come off the trees in earnest, and that's also helped by the fact that we had a bit of a drought this fall. So it was an early and fast foliage, I guess I would say, and we had our first frost last week. So that's impacting the landscape, but it's still pretty beautiful. It's in the 50s today, a little cloudy, and you know we're looking for a mild winter where I live. So that could be good news for some.
All right, we are now going to talk about trends for 2026, and we will start where we should start, and that is on the farm. And I will just read the first line here. Farmers are using new approaches to engage visitors, from mobile applications to help them find and connect with farms, to adventure-themed activities that engage people in the landscape, like zip-lining and trails for e-biking. And then I want to mention, as I hand the microphone over to Carol, that 47 years of age is the average age of a beginner farmer. So it's really not too late to start farming.
It's never too late. Never too late. Yeah, I think of great interest to me was this idea about farmers as educators. We've seen farmers have to don all sorts of hats, but doing things like having customers pay to learn cheese making or maple sugaring, coming and working on the farm for an experience. And then also using social media to their advantage and doing some DIY or how-to sorts of things, again, educating people about what happens on the farm.
Okay, here are some numbers. There are 1,900,000 plus farms in the United States. The amount of acres of land being farmed are 880 million, and the average farm size is 463 acres. All right, over here on page 7, there's something called the Ag Venture. So tell us about agritourism. It's a booming industry.
It's a booming industry, and like you said in the opening quote, we're seeing that the farmers are really pulling out all the stops to get people there in every season and to do all sorts of things beyond just buy their produce. So you might have pumpkin patches or corn mazes, hosting people for bed and breakfast, or hosting weddings, doing farmers markets, but also selling direct to consumers. And so I think these trail riding on the property, just bringing as many people on the farm for various reasons, and that helps them have a diversity of income.
All right, flipping over to page 8, although we're not really thinking about heat at this time of year, here are some heat beaters. Researchers are engineering fruits and vegetables that survive and thrive in high temperatures and drought. Something in development is that potatoes that produce higher yields during heat stress, that's what they're developing, and then apples and pears that can thrive in hot climates. And then I want to read this about farmers marketing. I love your play on words here. Whoever does the titles is very clever. All right, farmers are differentiating themselves from competitors via social media platforms, value-added products with unique packaging, and CSA boxes with recipe cards, and produce pop-up shops at retail stores. By the way, I had to look up what CSA means, and it means Community Supported Agriculture. Okay, Anything more you'd like to say? And I'll pipe in a little bit more on our farms, Carol.
Well, again, I think this is us seeing farmers diversifying all their skill sets and what they do and really trying to get their customers where they are, which any good business person has to do. So farmers are doing it.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to our gardeners. Talking about them over on page 12, 56% of gardeners plan to expand their gardens in the coming year. So gardens are really popular in 2026. I want to read something called Easy Pickings. Gardeners want fast-growing, pick-and-eat crops such as microgreens, cherry tomatoes, dwarf strawberries, and compact peppers. These new snack gardens aren't just for eating. They're for aesthetic enjoyment, wellness, and social sharing. Try saying social sharing 10 times fast. Okay, what can you tell us about gardens, Carol?
Well, I think what you just said to build on that is this idea that when we go back to the statistics, 41% of gardeners say the lack of time is why they don't garden more. And so there's a lot of emphasis on helping people make it accessible, which is these fast-growing small crops or container gardening, or the idea that, we can grow inside during the year with a simple light table. So just this idea of making it so that it's not such a time-consuming activity but still getting the benefits, I think that's on trend.
Okay, over on page 14, and I dedicate this to people who really do not enjoy mowing the lawn, and this is called Goodbye Grass. First of all, the homeowners are starting to eliminate lawns little by little, replacing narrow strips in full sun with a mix of perennials, leaving space for the odd tomato plant with a fancy cage to make it look ornamental, or maybe using herbs like lemon thyme as edging plants. And then at our municipalities, they are paying people to replace lawn with pollinator-friendly native plants, such as clover, honeysuckle, and thistle. Very, very interesting. All right, let's move over to page 16, talk about good eats. What we will be eating in 2026. And according to the Almanac, today's indulgent-minded consumer wants restaurant-quality meals at home. People don't want bland microwaved meals. They want sensory experiences that deliver gratification and pleasure, even in their own kitchens. So what can you tell us about what we're going to be eating this year?
Well, I love this. I think it's kind of the frugality thing. We want to eat at home, but we don't want to give up the wild flavors, that we might get a chef might make us. So we're learning to do more things for ourselves. I think there's, a move toward one of the things that we talk about on the next page is flowery flavors. People boosting flavors, incorporating lots of edible flowers. I mean, they're beautiful. They smell good. They can make things taste good. So in our vinegars or as garnishes or in our ice cubes. So I love that trend as a gardener myself.
People are, quote, jawing about dining alone. Solo restaurant reservations have risen 29% in the past 2 years in the U.S. Restaurants are now offering communal tables and counter seats for parties of one. That's a great way to not stay home and to meet new people. I love it. I'm single.
I think so too.
I'm single, so I put a star by that, Carol. And then
a little self-care.
A little self-care. And then I like this that libraries are now loaning out equipment for food preservation, including steam juicers, pressure canners, and dehydrators. Borrowers can learn how to use the equipment safely via free workshops. And now on to our health. How will we be feeling in 2026, Carol?
Well, we're going to have a lot of technological intervention, I think, on our sides as those tools improve. So we talk about that, like at-home sleep tests, smart mattresses, monitoring devices. Many of us already know our steps. But I think this idea also, we're talking about, one of the things we say is we eat, we feel. 90% of Americans say what they eat and drink affects their emotional well-being. So thinking about, what we put in our bodies. And, of course, that's kind of an Almanac thing from the very beginning.
Okay. And then we will wrap up our annual flip-through with some information about our animal friends. Consumers are looking for more ways to include their pets in their lives, whether it be while they travel, work, or play. We'll see more dogs and cats at workplaces in 2026, also in hotels and in outdoor dining and retail spaces. And somebody brought in their dog to the breakfast place where I ate on Saturday, and the dog behaved, so I was okay with it. It was a little strange, but, I'm growing. And I'll tell you what, for most people that have dogs and cats, that is a part of the family, and you are one of them, Carol.
That's right. 46% of households in the U.S. own dogs. 30% of us own cats. 3% of us own fish.
2% birds, and 1% rabbits. All right, so the cost of cats versus dogs, which do you think is more expensive? Well, you guessed it.
Ooh, well,
dogs.
We do know.
Yeah, well, dogs are bigger, and as we just read, more people have dogs than cats. So the average yearly expenditure for dog owners is $1,740 for the dog, each dog, and then for a cat, $1,311. The leading breeds of our dogs are the Labrador, Chihuahua, and Golden Retriever. And for cats, the Persian, British Shorthair, and Siamese cats. All right, so I want to get over to something on page 22 as we wrap up. Seeing as you are both a dog lover and owner, his name is Jack, by the way. How's Jack doing?
Jack's doing great. He's got I have a new dog walker who helps me out, and they have a wonderful friendship.
All right, so over on page 22, you have a little section called Animal Farm, PHARM. And it says that more companies will allow employees to take time off to care for a sick or new pet and will offer pet health insurance as a benefit. Have you been approached about that yet?
I have not, but I love this idea because I think, I manage a lot of people, and I think people do use their time, their discretionary time to take care of pets if they need to, especially if they lose a pet or they're adopting a pet. Those are times that they need to spend, away from the office. Okay,
Carol, with your dog Jack, I'm going to ask you based on what's in the Almanac here. 63% of us designed a specific part of our homes for our pets. Have you done that?
I have not designed a specific, maybe a corner of a room, but I do keep a lot of carpets around because he needs those to get around. So I think it's definitely impacted my home design.
How big is Jack, by the way?
Jack is 60 pounds of love.
Okay, so then you're probably not part of the 51% of animal owners who purchased a pet stroller or carrier, I'm going to guess.
No, but I've seen a lot of these recently. This is, I have a friend who has a trailer for her dog to go biking in. William's a little bit older now, 11 years old, so he gets a ride.
I love that. And then finally, 53% of us, those of us who have an animal, a pet, 53% of us commissioned a custom portrait of our pet. So final question in this section, do you have a portrait of Jack?
I don't yet.
Not yet. Well,
Not yet.
It's totally in for 2026, so you have a little time, Carol. Well, I'm David Warren, talking by phone with the editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac, Carol Conair. When we come back on today's program, we're going to give you this winter's and next summer's for 2026, the forecasts for our various FM listening areas. Now, you've heard me say it for many years. The OFA boasts of an 80% accuracy rate with its long-range weather forecasting. Carol and I will talk about that right after this.
The Road Show is a listener favorite which airs each weekday here on the Oasis Radio Network starting at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central. The Road Show also has a great section on our website, oasisnetwork.org. There you'll find audio archives of select past interviews, plus guest lineup and contact information, and links to our Road Show sponsors and its host. So join us for The Road Show, whether on your radio, computer, or mobile device at oasisnetwork.org.
Our guest on today's program is Carol Conair, the 14th editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac since 1792. Carol, have you studied any of the other editors besides the ones that we know about, like Judd Hale and Janice Stillman that have been on this program many times? Have you looked back at the other editors and their lives?
Oh, absolutely. There's a really interesting write-up on almanac.com about our other editors, and it's fascinating. We come from all walks of life, and each has made an impression. We all don't want to be Robert Scaife. He was in 1938, and he took out the weather reports, and the almanac almost didn't survive, and he certainly didn't.
Oh, my.
So there's a real sense of wanting to keep on tradition.
Oh, my. What a misstep. Okay. What do you enjoy about your job as editor?
Well, every day is something different, but certainly all the topics we cover are passionate areas for me. I'm really into history, and I'm a big-time gardener. I love folklore. I love watching the night sky, and all of those things tend to depend on the weather. So I like to go out hiking with Jack, but I like to know what the weather's going to be. So all those things are part of my daily work.
I would assume one of the toughest parts of your job is the elimination process of the articles and things that make it into each almanac. Would you say that's one of the tougher things you do?
It is, and we really work as a team. We bring all of our best ideas forward. There might be 50 to 75 ideas, and we're whittling those down to, 14 or 15 that we think will really resonate in that particular edition.
All right, one of the mainstays of the Old Farmer's Almanac are the calendar pages. Now, that is never up for debate. That makes it into every edition of the Old Farmer's Almanac. And this is when the OFA does an astronomical look at that particular year, in this case for 2026, the sunrises and sunsets, as well as the moon and ocean tides and the planets that will be visible in that particular year, and so on and so on. So how do we, in this modern era, use this information? Carol?
Well, I think in a lot of different ways. Certainly people who are that live near the seacoast want to know the tides, and also figuring in, people can look and back and forward in these times and look, ahead, all in one place. So I think it really depends on the user, but when you're looking at the calendar pages, I think it's just, again, this idea of every day has something to sort of make you think, maybe smile and ponder.
Tell us when you started working on the 2026 edition. Was that in 2025 or even before?
Yes. So like right now I'm working on the 2027, and that will be out next August. So we're always well more than a year ahead. And, we work on different aspects throughout the year, but of course the weather is the very last thing to come in because we take all that time to make our predictions.
Well, I was going to say, because how many months in advance before you have to go to press are those predictions in for the weather?
So we go to press in June every year, toward the end of June, and we'll get the weather right at the beginning of spring. So we'll start to see some of the sections even in late January, but the bulk of it comes in March. Okay,
so how can a meteorologist, as good as you have there, in fact, I want to mention their names, Bob Smearbeck and Brian Thompson, how can they determine in spring of 2025 what's going to happen in spring of 2026?
I know. I always think people want this to be the folklore part. Like, we're reading the woolly bear caterpillars, but our founder, Robert B. Thomas, was an astronomer interested in the sun cycles, the storms, magnetic storms on the sun. And those are an 11-year cycle that happens. And so we I think we're moving into cycle 26. So that's a lot of data. It's a lot of patterns that we can weigh against what we know what happened with the weather. And so it's really about the science of climatology and meteorology and sun science rolled into one formula. And that's how we do our long-range forecasting. So while Bob and Brian are short-range forecasters for AccuWeather, they use our formula to base all of our predictions on.
By the way, a big round of applause goes out to Bob Smearbeck and Brian Thompson, because their accuracy rate for this last year went way up from 64% the previous year to 86%, which tops that annual traditional rate of 80% accurate. So that's quite a feat to be 86% accurate overall based on predicting temperatures and precipitation for the following year. That's an amazing feat, Carol.
They're wonderful, and it takes a lot of knowledge to make it that kind of an accurate forecast, and they are incredible.
All right, I'm getting ready to give the forecasts for our FM listening areas for winter of 2025 into 2026, but overall, what will this winter be like?
Well, our headline is mostly wild with pockets of mild. So what we're saying is that most of the country is either going to be mild and wet or mild and dry. But we're not calling for a big snowy winter, even in places where it's typically snowy. We're actually calling for snow in the lower mid-Atlantic regions and the eastern Ohio Valley, but also in New Mexico. And so we're talking about dry on the coast of California and really also on the East Coast, and a big swath of mild and dry in the middle of the country, with sort of the upper Northwest being mild and wet, and then again to the east, a mixed bag of cold, dry, and snowy.
What's interesting is that there are only about 4 states in the continental U.S. that are expecting cold and snowy weather for this winter. And I don't know if this is good news or bad news for both our Ohio listeners and Virginia listeners, that your states are part of that 4-state region for both cold and snowy. A little bit better news for our listeners in Oklahoma and the Ozarks. It will be mild and dry. Now, moving on to summer of 2026, what can we expect except heat? Carol?
More of that. We're definitely calling for plenty of hot across America. You know, we're talking about hot and dry again on the coasts. And also for Florida, with hot and rainy when you think about Texas and sort of the southern tier of states, with toward the Canadian border for both of the central part of the country and the most west part. We're talking about cool and dry, and again, you know, having some of that Arctic air come south even in the summer, though that's not for the whole country. And then in the north, very northeast, hot and rainy. So we're really looking at a hot summer. It depends on where you are, what kind of precipitation you'll get.
All right, here are the forecasts for this coming summer for our FM listening areas. For Tulsa and Oklahoma City, hot and rainy. For the Ozarks, cool and rainy. For our Ohio listeners, hot and rainy. And for our Virginia listeners, hot and dry. Well, the Old Farmer's Almanac for 2026 is available wherever books are sold. That's bookstores, newsstands, on the website almanac.com, or by calling 1-800-ALMANAC. I'm David Warren, and my special guest on today's program is the editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac, Carol Conair. After the break, we're going to announce this year's winners of the annual recipe and essay contests. Don't miss it. Back after this. I'm David Warren, Program Director at Oasis Radio Network and one of the hosts of this podcast. All of our hosts enjoy hearing from you, our listening family, so drop us a note. Our email address is roadshow@oasisnetwork.org. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and you'll receive new episodes on your mobile devices. And now, back to the show. Back with us this year is Carol Conair, editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac, and we're talking about the new 2026 edition, out wherever books are sold. And it's time to announce the winners of the annual recipe contest and the essay contest. All right, so this past year, people sent in recipes regarding tomatoes. So how was that? Were you there for taste testing day?
Absolutely. This was a lot of fun. We know that our readers love to grow tomatoes, and they also love to send us their recipes. We had many to test. So it was a hard job, but somebody had to do it.
I think you've earned that after all the other things that you do throughout the year. So tell us what won first place using tomatoes.
First place for our tomato recipe contest was fresh tomato bacon jam. And this was from Donna Marie Ryan of Topsfield, Massachusetts. And this was a winner. I got to make this. I tested this recipe myself. And it was so fun because everybody gobbled it up and loved it.
It looks like something you would put on a toast point. Is that what it's mainly used for?
You could put it on a toast point. You could put it on I've seen it in restaurants, like on a burger. Like, okay, I'll have a bacon jam, tomato bacon jam burger. You could put them on eggs. It really could go with almost anything as a bit of a relish.
Okay, the second prize went to Gramps Tomato Turkey Burgers. And the picture here, there's a tomato on the bun, but that's not the tomato that Gramps used. He had to be a little bit more creative than that. He actually put in sun-dried tomatoes into the meat mix. There's ground turkey, breadcrumbs, Parmesan cheese, and seasoning, plus those sun-dried tomatoes. And then that becomes the patty, and then you make your tomato turkey burger with it. And then third prize I found to be very odd, so you'll have to tell us what this tasted like. The Zesty Tomato Basil Ice Cream.
So this was from Ronna Farley of Rockville, Maryland, and she really wowed our taste buds. I have to tell you, I was skeptical, like you said, and then I had one bite, and it was delicious. It's ice cream, so as you can see, it's never going to be bad. But incredibly, you could taste these flavors, and it was not off-putting at all. It was really brilliant.
All right. What about this next year for 2026? What's the contest all about?
For 2026, it's going to be berry recipes, which we've already started to receive some. So if people have a special berry recipe, we can't wait to see yours.
All right. Not necessarily just a pie. It can be anything, right?
Oh, it could be anything. Yeah, berries. In fact, in our garden guide, we had a spinach contest, and somebody did strawberries, balsamic strawberries, on a goat cheese toast point that you were talking about with spinach on top, and that was one of our top winners.
I love that. Okay, so now it's time to announce and read the first prize winner of the 2025 essay contest, and it was all about the best gift I ever gave, not received, but gave. And so, as tradition goes, Carol, you will read the first prize winner, and this was from Susan Brownwell of Palmetto, Florida.
All right, yes. Growing up in Silver Springs, Florida, our house faced a sandy dirt road where you could see folks traveling from a grocery store down the way that sold a little bit of everything. Down the road from us lived Aunt Sally with her 12 children. 2 of them walked barefoot to the store every day to get a block of ice for their ice box. They would call out a hello on their way to the store, and we would wave. Coming back, they were in a big hurry so that the ice wouldn't melt. They would pick it up with their fingers and run as far as they could before dropping it in the sand and waiting for their fingers to warm up. One morning, Dad took me and my brother Tommy into town to the local hardware store to look at little red wagons. We bought the shiniest one. After supper, we walked to Aunt Sally's house to deliver the wagon. All the little kids gathered round and took turns being pulled in it. The next afternoon, as they walked to the store, they were grinning and singing. Coming home, they were pulling the little red wagon with a block of ice.
That's a lovely story. And I think I'll read the second prize winner from Rex Poland of Dallas, Texas, our neighbor to the south. Waking up one stormy Christmas Eve morning in my Brazos River dwelling, hearing a loud, mournful sound, I went outside into the drizzle and climbed over the levee, discovering a terrified heifer treading water trapped in debris. The exhausted cow had been too close to a collapsing riverbank. What to do? Call 911 regarding a drowning cow? Having no rope, I improvised with neckties plus extension cords. Wading out and lassoing her was easy. I got her ashore, and once her hooves were on firmer turf, she bolted up the levee. After a bit of a chase, she stopped as I tried to calm her. A pickup in the distance driving down the levee road suddenly stopped. A woman was running toward us, crying, "Sheba!" The cow, mooing loudly, ran toward the voice. Happy reunion. The next morning, a knock at my door. It was the woman carrying still warm kolaches as thanks for rescuing her prize cow, plus announcing that Sheba had given birth in the night after her ordeal. I never realized. My heart swelled with joy on that Christmas morning. Another kind of a birth in a barn. A memorable gift for sure. That's lovely. That's so lovely. Okay, Tell us about the 2026 essay contest.
All right. Drum roll, please. This one is my most embarrassing moment that still makes me laugh.
That still makes me laugh. All right. So before we say goodbye, let me mention some of the different articles that are in the 2026 edition of the Old Farmer's Almanac. There's one on farming called More Eggs and More Baskets, about farmers diversifying to remain solvent and relevant. There's one in the gardening section on Stop and Smell the Houseplants. That's an article about aromatic plants for the home. In the food section, Unfinished Business, the art and science of leftovers. Home remedies, you mentioned this earlier, Carol. Sweet Sensation is the name of the article, and it's about the healing power of honey. And then astronomy, you also touched on this, a crash course on space trash. That's about the high-velocity fragments that are floating out there in space. And then if we can spend just a minute on this, my favorite article was in the history section, so I'm with you. We're both history buffs here, Carol. But what a wonderful article for the 250th anniversary of our nation. It's called Sowing Patriotism. But sewing in this case is SEWING. Now, I can tell our listeners about it, but why don't you tell them?
Oh, this is a wonderful story about Mary Pickersgill, and she was the sewer of Old Glory. She was a flag maker. She was a ship mast maker. She was widowed, living in, I believe, Philadelphia, and so it's really the 250th anniversary of her birth, and so she, has this place in history. So it's a quirky look at a patriotic thing, our wonderful flag.
And what I gleaned from the article is that her giant U.S. flag that waved there at Fort McHenry inspired Francis Scott Key's The Star-Spangled Banner. I did not know that. What a great story.
It's an amazing story. And, of course, that was originally a poem, The Defense of Fort McHenry. But, yes, it was her flag flying proudly. It was the biggest flag made to date, and that's what they wanted to fly over the port.
Well, before we say goodbye, I've got to ask you this because I have a background in journalism, and I am not looking for another job here, Carol, but I'm curious, what are you looking for in contributors coming up?
That's a tough one because I think it's hard for people to offer story ideas that, for something because we have such a long history. So people do sometimes send us their things. So what are we looking for? You can look at the different areas that we do have stories in: weather, space, history, farming, folklore, certainly as useful as we can. Fishing is another area, again, home remedies, food. And so I think it's really about intense curiosity. So if people have stories that are in those areas that are quirky enough, we'd love to hear about them.
And how can our listeners stay in touch with the Old Farmer's Almanac till we speak again next year?
Oh, a great way. Well, certainly we're on sale now if you want to pick up our annual edition. But almanac.com is chock-a-block full of great advice and stories and more of everything that we do in the Almanac, all for free. And it's pretty on your phone. It's easy to read. And so that's a great place to check us out.
Something we've never talked about, and we will wrap up our time with you mentioning this, that you have a store. And you have some really unique things that are very complementary to an Old Farmer's Almanac. So it's on brand, but it's things that people wouldn't even think of, like socks. And I wrote this down. You've got Happy Chicken socks, Honeybee socks, Dragonfly socks. You've got sun hats, T-shirts, baseball caps. The list goes on and on. You've got things in the garden section, farmer's pantry. Anything else you want to say about your store before we say goodbye?
Oh, yeah, I think there's just so many fun things on there. I've got some of the tools myself. Our gardening tools are amazing. This knife we have, this Japanese knife, that's incredible. It can dig out roots. It can, whack off whole branches. So, yeah, we really take the grower, the outdoors person into consideration when we pick out items for our stores. And
that all is on the website almanac.com, where you can also purchase your almanac. And, again, there are the different styles of the different editions of the Almanac on the website, or you can find your 2026 OFA at your local bookstore or newsstand, also available on Amazon.com, or you can call the phone number 1-800-ALMANAC. Carol, you are a delight, and I'm so glad you joined us once again this year.
Thank you, David. Have a wonderful year ahead.
Thank you so much. Well, I am David Warren, and I'll be back after this final break, along with our longtime sound man, Tim Maroney, and we're going to read some of the Almanac's anecdotes and pleasantries. Stay with us.
I'm Karen Jensen Salisbury, one of the hosts you hear on the Oasis Network Roadshow. For 35 years, this 1 hour of the day has inspired and motivated you, our listeners, with thousands of stories of people whose lives demonstrate the truth that, with God, all things are possible. It's an hour that you should make a part of your day, Monday through Friday, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central. The Roadshow, an Oasis Network presentation.
And we're back. I am David Warren, your humble host today, and joining me for this final segment. This is tradition as well, the wrap-up segment of the Almanac Roadshow, in this case from the 2026 Old Farmer's Almanac. Tim Maroney has been here how many years, Tim?
It will be 32 in April.
32 years with Oasis Radio Network. And how much more did you weigh 1 year ago when we did the Almanac show together.
I was nearly 110 pounds heavier than I am now.
Wow. Well, you look great.
Thank you.
Your picture is on our Facebook page. They're going to have to scroll down and see you in fall support days. But you're running the controls, and so you can see what Tim Maroney looks like. But he's
on our new board.
On our new board, and that is in Studio A. And he is a good man, by the way. So we're going to read just a couple of maybe 2-3 things from Anecdotes and Pleasantries. And so you're a person that laughs easily, even at cringy things. So this is called This Year's Cringers. Okay?
Okay.
Or groaners or moaners or whatever you want to call them. Okay, so here we go. Get your drink because you're going to need to be ready to laugh. All right. So just so everyone's clear, I'm going to put my glasses on.
Took me a minute.
I know, you've got to be ready for these.
Yeah.
I once worked at a pizza shop to get by. I needed the dough. All right, you got that one. My friends and I have named our band Duvet. It's a cover band. You don't
one is over my head.
You don't shop for bedding. Okay. What did the surgeon say to the patient who insisted on closing up their own incision?
That's a mystery.
Suit yourself. All right. I'm trying to organize a hide-and-seek tournament, but good players are really hard to find. You felt that one
That's
coming,
good.
didn't you? All right.
Yeah.
I've started telling everyone about the benefit of eating dried grapes. It's all about raising awareness. Dad, are we pyromaniacs? Yes, we arson. And finally, writing my name in cursive is my signature move. All right, so you got a little article here from Anecdotes and Pleasantries from the 2026 Old Farmer's Almanac, and this is called At a Loss for Words.
Over the last 20 years, humans have been speaking 3,000 fewer words a day. Research from the American Psychological Association shows the average number of daily spoken words dropped from 16,000 to around 13,000. This decline is being attributed to, what else, David Warren? Texting and social media. And for those who have always believed that women talk more than men, it's true, but not by much. Women speak about 13,349 words per day versus men at 11,950 words per day. So what have we really learned? We couldn't say.
You're very good at that, by the way.
Thank you.
You're a good reader. Okay, so a few more cringers, and then you have something to read, and then we'll say goodbye. But these cringy statements have to do with measurements. Measurements, okay?
Okay.
The time it takes to temporarily sail 220 yards at 1 nautical mile per hour. That's called a knot furlong. All right, 1/millionth of a mouthwash.
1/millionth.
A microscope.
Scope.
The time between slipping on a peel and hitting the pavement. A banana second. This is, you probably will get this one. 1 million aches.
1 million aches.
1 million aches.
I don't receive it.
No, you don't, nor do I. It would be a megahertz.
I have a shirt that says that.
All right. Basic unit of laryngitis. Horsepower.
Horsepower.
And finally, what's another way of saying 8 nickels?
8 nickels. 40 cents.
2 paradigms.
Too bad.
All right, why don't you bring it on home here?
Okay. How to live to be 100 years old or more. We should all learn a thing or two from Andy Anderson of Benicia, California, who lived to the age of 106. So did my granddad, by the way. He shared this wisdom on his 100th birthday. Always maintain a good sense of humor. Never be too good to start at the bottom. Exercise every single day, even when you don't feel like it. Don't spend more money than you make. Eat around the mold. Don't go wasting food. Your family is the most precious thing you'll ever have in life. Don't ever be afraid to be your true self. Education is important, but not necessary. Life can be an education in itself. You must be able to forgive even if it's difficult to do. Love is not always easy. Sometimes you have to work at it. Try not to take yourself so seriously. My full name is William Bradford James Anderson, and my initials always remind me to ask myself, why be just anybody?
WBJA. Why be just anybody? That's great. Again, that was William Bradford James Anderson, and he lived to the ripe old age of 106.
May I add a personal note?
Sure.
The item that says you must be able to forgive even if it's difficult to do so, David Warren is a primary example of that to all of us here.
What, you having to forgive me?
Well, modeling that.
I'm not a grudge holder.
Right. Amen.
No, yeah, we'll just leave it at that.
A good example.
Seeing as I'm looking good at the end of this program, I will just leave it at that. Well, Tim, thank you. Thank you for your, 30 plus years with us. And tell us again, how many years?
32 in April, a great place to serve the body.
A refreshing place to be, the Oasis Radio Network. Again, thank you to Tim and to our very special guest back with us this year, Carol Conair, the editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac. My name is David Warren, and I don't have to tell Tim twice what to say next because he knows, because he's recorded hundreds of programs where I end each one saying, it's been another great road show. You've been listening to The Road Show. If you'd like to write to us, here's our address. The Road Show, P.O. Box 1924, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 74101. Our email address is roadshow@oasisnetwork.org. The views of today's guest aren't necessarily those of this station, but we do appreciate and thank our guest for spending this time with us. The Road Show, an Oasis Network presentation.